Everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of SPE Student Chapter Boomer Test, I'd like to welcome all of you to the first session of Python's training. My name is Yamina and I'll be moderating today's session. Today's session is going to be delivered by Mr. Vyas, whom is covering petroleum and data analytics project. Mr. Vyas is a master's in petroleum engineering graduating this year from IIT ISM Tampa. Currently working as a machine learning and data analytics consultant at Dialytics, and the CEO of Petroleum from scratch with over of 1.5 year of experience with oil and gas applications problem solving using Python. Mr. Vyas works on numerous full-scale to mini-scale projects ranging from core reservoir engineering concepts to drilling engineering concepts to oil production engineering and numerical simulation using Python and its packages. Mr. Vyas actively maintains a GitHub repository for oil and gas data analytics and machine learning and deep learning to help and mentor the community with whatever he learns. So before turning the mic to Mr. Vyas, I'd like to remind you to keep your mics muted. And if you have any questions, write them in the chat box. So Mr. Vyas, the mic is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thank you everyone for making it to the fourth lecture. We've come a long way from not knowing Python sorry, I clicked on something. Okay. From not knowing Python to basically knowing a good deal about Python. Now we know a good deal about oil and gas and projects using Python. We know a good deal about NumPy, pandas, and how to visualize various scenarios. We have seen how to visualize a rel perm plot. We have seen how to visualize a fractional flow plot, and we now have basically we have concluded on the fact that Python can be a great tool, be it whatever source of oil and gas industry or other industry is concerned, right? So the sessions before this session were pretty theoretical, I would say, though they were very hands-on. But in this practical aspect also, we were still learning things. We were still looking at and getting introduced to what Python can do. Yes, it can do a lot more, but it's good enough what we have come far and what we have known by now. And today's session will be a great session. My personal favorite session is sessions where I discuss projects. So today we will look at two very elaborate projects. One will be uh, well test analysis, and the second one will be decline curve analysis. And these are the most important projects in oil and gas industry, and very important in this session. Why? Because these are the projects which are very closely related to data. Okay, so you will see how with simple data we are coming to conclusions as good as we will do today. Okay, and that's why I say that as a petroleum engineer, even when you don't know Python and you're reading tools and you're reading concepts, you are already a data analyst because you are always talking in terms of data. Well, testing analysis was developed by mathematicians, and they were always making out strategies to do conclusions that would be useful for reservoir engineering. But it was totally dependent on data, right? So that's why, like, not only just well test analysis, be it any sort of domain, be it drilling engineering, a lot of drilling engine, for example, D exponent, drilling exponent, right? Reliability exponent. That comes from, pretty much people have looked at various sorts of relationships from the data and they have come across such relationship. So ROP, weight on bit, stuff like that, you are combining a lot of inputs to form a correlation, which is again a result of data analysis. Material balance is a result of data analysis because you have to do various straight line plots to calculate various things. The slope will give you something, the intercept will give you something, stuff like that. So if you go to my GitHub repository, I have uploaded material balance as well. But I don't think there will be much time after we discuss these two projects in an elaborate fashion. If you have no idea about the basic concepts of these topics, don't have to worry about it. I will give you a fair amount of layman level introduction. So let's get going. I'll share my screen. Let me know once you see the screen. Yeah, I'm sharing now. I hadn't shared by now. I'll share now. Yep. Can you see my screen? Can someone?
Yeah, it's obvious.
Do you see Petroleum Data Analytics, this notebook? Yeah. Can someone say yes or no? How to check in chat? Okay, perfect. It's visible then. Let's get started. So, like I said, the first project will be to summarize what this project does. It calculates reservoir permeability using data. And that's the summary of what well test analysis is. For people who know more about it, definitely a lot of more things can be done using this data. But my focus today is to just tell you what we start with and how long we can come towards a very different conclusion. Given that we just have data, we just have pressure and time data in well test analysis, and we will be calculating permeability of the reservoir. Just imagine. So that's one project that we'll be talking about. It will be a long, basically half of the session will be about that, and then we will be talking about how decline curve analysis can be used to forecast oil rates and do reserve calculations, stuff like that, right? So let's start with well test analysis. Okay. Yeah. So in this, the techniques that we will be using will be very much what we have seen by now. We have seen NumPy, we have seen plotting, we have seen domain concepts. I'll just give you an introduction. Uh, I hope a lot of you know about reservoir engineering. So let's start talking about what well test analysis is. So basically, when you throw a pebble into a swimming pool or something like that, you see ripples forming, right? So once you initiate a disturbance in the static pool, the disturbances generate in the form of ripples and they start traveling away and away from that point of impact, right? So compare the same situation in terms of reservoir engineering. The pebble where it strikes is your well. Okay. Your well is the disturbance that you have created in a static reservoir. Your reservoir was a fully pressurized uh, container of fluid before, and now what you have done is you have probed and you have just put a hole into it and you have put a well into it. Now all of a sudden that disturbance, it will travel farther and farther from the well into the reservoir, deeper and deeper. It will create vacuum like pressure vacancies inside the reservoir. What will happen is, right, once you drill the well and you start producing oil from one pore will be produced to the well. The pore next to that pore will throw the oil to the pore which was emptied just now, and then the cycle keeps on going. So basically, one pore fills the other pore next to it, right? And then by the time, after some time, what you will see is initially very neighboring pores will be empty. But later, as you keep on producing, as you keep on spending more and more time, the vacancy or the effect of this pressure variation, it reaches the boundary of the well, boundary of the reservoir of the well. So this is if a reservoir engineer has to understand this scenario, which is actually happening because of the physics, how can we understand? Because we are not in the reservoir, right? If we were in the pore scale, we could have seen, okay, one by one pores are getting empty. That's why the disturbance is created. But that's not happening. We cannot sit in the reservoir. We have to look at the reservoir in some form of data. So what we do rather is we dip a pressure gauge in the wellbore, and then what we see is we see the pressure recordings with respect to time. Okay. And then once we record pressure with respect to time in a well test, then all we have to do is what I'm telling you today. And the final product will be the permeability of the reservoir. So basically, the pressure gauge recordings will be giving you how permeable the reservoir is. Now, people, you can intuitively imagine that if your reservoir is very permeable, the pressure will fall off rapidly. If your reservoir is very tight, the pressure might not fall off rapidly. So that's why we can fairly assume that the rate of fall of pressure, or if it's a build-up test, the rate of increment of pressure, or the quickness or the rapidity in which the reservoir responds to a disturbance, that's called well test analysis. Because The result of that analysis can be related to how permeable the reservoir is. I'll give you one more example, and then we will just get to the coding part of things, right? Suppose you have a metallic slab, okay? It's a metallic iron slab. And in the middle of that slab, suppose you note down the initial temperature of that slab, okay? It might be the room temperature. Now that is similar to the initial reservoir pressure. Your metallic slab is like the reservoir, okay? And temperature will be acting like a pressure, okay? Now what you do is you light a candle in the center of the, the slab, and you see what you see at 10 seconds of at the first second, the only heated portion in the slab is where you have lit the candle. But slowly, if you touch the candle again after 10 seconds, the heat travels further. If you touch the candle again, the heat travels even further. And by the time, if you come and touch the candle 10 seconds or 10 minutes later, you see that the entire slab is now burnt. Now, again, the rate at which, or the increment of rate of increment of the temperature in the slab is proportional to the thermal conductivity of the slab, right? That's exactly what we call permeability in the reservoir in terms of pressure. So a slab, temperature, thermal conductivity, a reservoir, pressure, flow conductivity, which I would like to call permeability. Okay, so let's go. So this is the equation that basically, we have to keep in mind. So whatever pressure we are recording, this is the equation which by physics it says that this is how, this is the equation that pressure will follow with respect to time. If you plot pressure on a semi-log line, it will give a straight line. And if you find the straight line, the slope of that straight line will give you formation permeability. So let's go. So this is a data set that I have imported, and I found out, trust me, I found out this data set 3 to 5 days back on LinkedIn. Someone had shared a very nice analysis he has done in Microsoft Excel. I took that data, and he has shared in open source. So you don't have to ask me for this data. If you run this code cell, you will directly get the access. Okay. So if the first thing that we do in well test data is you do a Cartesian plot. Okay. So the Cartesian plot, it won't give you much of an idea about the permeability or anything, but it will give you the information about what kind of data or testing it was. So it's because the pressure is falling with respect to time, it means that we have done a drawdown test. We have been producing oil to reduce the pressure. Okay, so that's the analysis. Now you cannot really find anything from this data. You cannot do any conclusions from it, but it is just giving you one information that it's a drawdown test. If it was not a drawdown test, your pressure would be increasing with time because build up. If you have shut in the well, of course your pressure will keep on building up, right? So that's the indication that a Cartesian plot will give. But that's not important in our analysis. Let's move forward. What you have to do is you have to hit the target spot, which is this equation. What this equation says is if your reservoir is flowing in a radial geometry, if the oil is flowing in a radial geometry towards your well bore, then if you plot it in a semi-log format, that is, if you take the log of time and put it on x-axis, and whatever pressure readings are there, if you take them normally and plot them on y-axis, if you plot them such way, if everything is correct, your graph will be a straight line. And you can use this graph. The slope of this graph will give you the permeability. Okay, I'll tell you how. That's for later. But right now the target is to find that straight line. Now the difficulty is it's not that easy to find out this straight line because of course, because once you drill a well, the near wellbore region is, pretty skinny, pretty damaged. There is, of course, a transition period before the wellbore reaches the untouched part of the formation, the pressure transient or the pressure pulse. It reaches the untouched part of the formation. And that is the most representative zone that should be used to calculate permeability. So the major task in well test analysis is for us to find out the middle time region, or people call it as the infinite acting radial flow, IARF, because that's the most representative part of the reservoir, because no damage is there, nothing from the, from the external world has touched that zone. It's totally belonging to the reservoir. And that should be used to calculate permeability. Because if you calculate the permeability for data from just the near wellbore region, you might calculate wrong things. There are complications like wellbore storage, because suppose what you have done is you have shut in the well before doing this test, and all of a sudden you open up and you note down the pressures. Now the initial pressures that you will record in the gauge will not be the actual representative pressures from the formation. Rather, they will be coming from the expansion of what oil was compressed in the wellbore itself. This phenomena is called wellbore storage. And your main goal as a reservoir engineer or a well test engineer is to demarcate or to find out the middle time region, right? And then once you find out the middle time region, you will be able to use the straight line. Okay. So the target is to find out that middle time region. I'll give you, so someone does not believe me, let's say. Someone says that, okay, I don't trust you. What if there is an ideal reservoir? There is no skin, there is no wellbore storage. What if I can find a straight line right at the word go? Let's do it. Let's trust that man and let's plot the semilog axis. Here's the semilog. Can you make out anything from this? Someone would say that, okay, this is my straight line. Someone this section is my straight line from first, like in the first block. Someone would say this is my straight line. Some other person would say this is my straight line, and someone would say 10 to 100 hours is my straight line. Everyone may be correct in their own, because everyone can pick a chunk of this line and call it a straight line. Mathematically, it's correct. But is it reservoir engineeringly correct? No, it's not. So we have to find out a technique in order to find out that middle time region. And that's given by Bordet in his analysis. It's called the derivative log-log analysis, right? And that's our third part. Okay, so the flow chart goes something like this. First, we do a Cartesian plot, simple XY plotting. Okay, I hope I don't need to go over the code part, because all I have done is I have taken. So I'll just print this data frame for you guys. This data frame looks something like this. Okay, I'll have to run it again because it shows the previous results. Let's start from zero. So this is how we start with. This is the data that we start with. You can see just time in pressure. So first thing is I take the x-axis as time on normal scale. I take the y-axis as pressure on normal scale, and I plot them. And these are, plt.style, plt.figure to change the figure size in style. And this is the main thing, plt.plot x comma y. X is my df time, y is my df pressure. This you can refer back to the pandas lecture that we talked, how to take various columns as, x-axis and y-axis. And this is my line width. If I want my line to be thick and visible, I put the line width as 3. And this is my X label. This is my Y label. All right. And this is my title. So you see a pretty customized plot I have created. So let's run it again. Okay. Okay, brilliant. So this is the plot that I have generated. Now, next up, we have done semilog analysis, and we have concluded that semilog analysis does not help much. Just new thing in this case is, if in case you want to use matplotlib to do a semilog plot, it changes from plt.plot to plt.semilog. Now, there are two different things here. Someone would like to take explicitly the log of time axis and use plt.plot. That's also correct. But if you want to plot, like change the scale of your axis, that's how you do it, you know. So that's high school math. So plt.semilog x, df time and df pressure. You can see my x-axis has now changed to a semilog. It's log, and this is because it's Cartesian. We call it a semilog plot. Okay. Now again, this is not giving us any idea, right? So we have to go forward and do the log plot, and that's the heart of well test analysis. That will eventually give you the zone, the time domain, which you have to pick for the straight line. Suppose that will give me, okay, 10 to the power minus 2 to 10, 10. That is 0.01 hours to 1 hour is my middle time region. Then I have to trust the Bordet analysis or the log analysis and do a semilog plot again in this section and use its slope to calculate permeability, because the slope is very important in this case. Okay, so let's go and do the log plot. Now in log plot, you have to calculate P dash, okay, and delta P. There are two things you have to calculate. Basically P dash, so if you see in this pressure, so initial pressure you have to know of the reservoir, and that I know from this data. When I took this data, the information was provided that the initial reservoir pressure was 2760 psi. Okay. Then what I do, I create a separate column for delta P, which is Pi minus P at every time step. So I take 2760 minus 2743, 2760 minus 2737, 2760 minus 2730, and so on. So I will have a column called delta P. Next up, I will take the differential of this delta P. That gives me d of delta P, right? And I don't need the sign. I don't need negative, positive. All I need is the magnitude of that differential. Okay. And then I will take the differential of time. That gives me d of delta P by delta T if I divide them both. Then I will multiply time with this ratio. That gives me pressure derivative. Remember, guys, pressure derivative, the definition of derivative in well test analysis is del P by del of log T. And that it basically turns out to be T del P by del T. So that's what we have to calculate. Simple math we are doing in Python, no rocket science. Okay. And once you look at it, you will get the idea yourself. Okay. So these are the columns that we are creating. So this is D of delta P I'm creating. You can see I have put NP dot absolute in order to focus just on the magnitude and not the sign, because signs, if in case something goes into negative, log plot would not allow that because log scales don't work on negatives, right? So NP dot absolute is important in this case. So first we have delta P, then I have created, you can see NP dot diff can be used to calculate the delta of something. When I say delta, it's the forward difference in mathematics. Y2 minus Y1. Okay. Subsequent value minus the prior value. Okay. To do that in Python, you can use np.diff, right? And then again, I have taken np.absolute absolute and I have stored it in this column, d of delta P. Similarly, I've created delta T. Now, since my definition of pressure derivative is T dP by dt, I mean T of del P by del T, that's exactly what I have calculated. You can see df time means T, df del P means d of del P means d of del P, and again divided by. So this is normal derivative. Once you multiply it with the time, that becomes the derivative for well test analysis. Because in well test analysis, derivative means d of P or d of del P by what? By log derivative with respect to log of time, right? So once you have run that, you just have to run the data frame again to check your calculations. So this is, P dash you have calculated. Next up, what you have to do is plot. You have to take log scale. Y-axis also has to be log. X-axis also has to be log. And then you have to plot on X-axis, you have to plot time. On Y-axis, you have to plot two things. One is pressure derivative, which is P dash, and one is delta P, which is this thing, del P. Okay. And once you run it, the plot looks like this. Okay, let's run it again. You can see. Now this is how a typical, derivative plot looks like. And this is, if you have come this far and you have plotted successfully, if you have plotted this thing, you have basically done majority of the hard work in well test analysis. Now all you have to do is find out the green zone, what I have colored already for you guys. In order to do that in Python, you have to use this command, plt.axv span, which means vertical span from left to right. From my analysis, I can definitely see that the derivative, that is P dash, on log scale, it becomes horizontal. It becomes a plateau. It becomes stabilized in time from 10 to the power 0 to 10 to the power 2, which means from 1 hour to 100 hour time domain, I can definitely say that the pressure derivative has stabilized. And that is very important because that tells me the green color time domain is basically my middle time region that I was talking about. You remember, right? I told you that finding this middle time region is paramount because this tells you the time domain where you have to do the semilog plot and the slope you have to use from that, right? So you have done it. You have found out that the minimum time. So basically, what it tells the well test engineer is that go back to your pressure data, take or truncate the data from first hour to the 100th hour, take that much data and do the semilog plot again and fit a straight line in that semilog plot. Find out the slope of that plot and give me that slope. Okay. And I will take it from there. Okay, perfect. As a reservoir engineer, I know that T minimum for infinite acting radial flow here is 1 hour because it's 10 to the power 0. T max is 50 hours. I'm not taking 100 hours because I see fluctuations down there. All I need is a chunk of this data. I don't need the entire data, because if it's a straight line, it will be straight line forever in this domain. So I'm just taking half of this, in the center. So 1 hour to 50 hours, right? Now I will take or truncate, I have truncated the data, like I said, from T minimum to T maximum. Okay. So I have truncated the data, and then I have done the semilog plot. Remember, guys, the initial semilog plot was looking like this. Okay. And now what you are going to see is a decision made semilog plot. Okay. This next semilog plot, we have information now. So we already know. Previously, there were 5 people fighting amongst each other, that someone said, this is my time domain. Someone said this, someone said this. And now we already know that this is the time domain, which looks exactly, it looks like. Actually, I would definitely go for this, because for me, this is the longest straight line ever. But now we have some confidence in our backyard that the border analysis gives me that this is my straight line, or my log analysis. Okay. And then we will plot this thing again, and you will see, plotting that same thing and plotting the straight line we have picked, it tells me that this is my time domain for the log straight line, semi-log straight line. Okay. And finally, once you have picked up this data, the section of this data which is capable to give me the correct permeability, all you have to do is, we are just checking again. You can see, if I just take this much data and plot it on sns.regplot, I have told you about regplot, regression plots from the previous lecture. It gives me a dead straight line, very straight. All I need to do now is find out the slope of this. Okay. Now, what I have to do is, I have to basically find out, okay, maybe something I have done wrong. I have to, no, I'm not done anything. I have taken the log initially. So basically, it gives me the slope of the straight line as minus 17.78. Now, I have found out the slope of the straight line. One final thing, all I need to do now is equate the slope with this thing. In well-test analysis, the slope of semilog straight line is equal to 162.6 q mu b by kh. The q is the flow rate, mu is the viscosity, b is the formation volume factor, k is permeability, h is my thickness. All this information you already know from your well. You have now also found out m. All you need to know is k. Your entire target was to find out k. So once you do the calculation, you can see I have calculated my formation permeability to be 47.99 millidarcies, or maybe 50 millidarcies. How cool is that? What we started with, just this pressure versus time data. Okay. What we used, our reservoir engineering knowledge. What we found out, we have found out permeability, right? So that's how brilliant it is. You can use data, your domain knowledge, your data analysis knowledge to reach to conclusions. If you did this by hand, just imagine how long it would have taken. Just because now you know a tool, you can prepare a whole report on it as a full end-to-end project. You can do anything. Like, you can boast about the fact that you have done this, right? Because it's very, like, it's, some people call it complex, this thing. But if you know Python, to do this hands-on while you are reading it, it becomes very easy to do. Okay. So that completes first project of ours for this evening, because it's evening in my side of the world. Let's move on to the next project, which is decline curve analysis. Now, again, we have taken in data. Now, in decline curve analysis, the data that you need is basically flow rate versus time data. Okay. Because when you are producing from a reservoir, of course, as the pressure falls, the pressure falls, the flow rates will also fall, right? The reservoir pressure declines, the flow rates that you are producing with, they will also decline with respect to time. Physics from the reservoir, it tells you that the decline will follow a smooth trend. It can follow an exponential decline, it can follow a harmonic decline, it can follow a, it can follow a hyperbolic decline. These are the most popular techniques. They're called ARPS decline curve analysis techniques. Okay. These are the models that we will do. So what we will do in this project is, we will take the flow rate time data, and we will fit our predefined models given by ARPS using SciPy Python library, SciPy optimization package. And we will get, again, we can use this to forecast oil rates into the future. We can do reserve analysis. If you know trapezoidal rule to calculate area under the curve, you can do basically a lot of this thing. Okay, so I'll take you a smooth ride through this project. It's pretty self-explanatory, by the way. So this is date. This is coming from an actual data from a Norwegian field. So you can see it's a gas well. So we have a rate time data. All you have, if you want to plot it. You can see it looks, pretty noisy, but it's not a great noise. If you see, you know, noise can be huge, but it's pretty good data. So this is the first hand plot. Okay, but you cannot really do a decline curve if your x-axis is in date format. So first, using Python, you have to convert it into actual days. You cannot work with date times. You have to convert it into days. Okay, suppose my first date was, let's say my first date is 2004, April 1st 2004. And my next data is 2004 May 1st. So this becomes 30 days, right? And that's how, and the first and the third row, the difference between them becomes 60 days and stuff like that. So I have to form a continuous variable from my date index. So that's what I have created a function for that. This is a scatter plot if someone wants to do that. So you have to create first a function, or you can do it without a function also, but I like creating functions. So this function, what this does is pass a time series data frame into it, and it will return a days column. Remember guys, this is a doc string. When you provide three quote marks at the top and bottom and put a string in between it, it becomes a documentation for a function for when you want to use it in the future. It becomes a reference that you can use, right? So what you have to do is you have to pass a time series data frame to it, and it will return a days column. That's what we need. So how it does it is, it basically takes a difference from the, from the initial date and whatever date we are. So we have done it using a for loop. Okay, we are going through each date one by one. We are keeping the first date strong right there, and we are taking the difference of that date between the first date and that date, and that I am appending into a list which is called days. And finally, I'm returning this list of days. Okay, and once I put this DCA data frame into this function that I have created, you can see I have this days column ready. You can see that 0, 30, 62. Now I have a continuous variable. Okay, now my x-axis is more understandable. It becomes days now. 0 days, 200 days, 400 days, 600 days. You can see now. All I have to do now is pick up a model, let's say hyperbolic model, and use optimization least squares fitting, and do that in Python to find out the best fit to this model. And finally, that best fit I can use to do the future forecast as well. All right. So the library that you need to use for this is scipy.optimize import curve fitting. Okay, this curve fitting gives you, what this curve fitting does is, for suppose my equation that I need to fit in this is ax plus bx square, right? Ax plus bx square. Now x, or let's say at plus bt square. This is the equation that I want to fit. Now I can only fit this equation if I know a and b. So what this curve fitting does is, it takes actual data, it takes the structure of the equation, and it goes through various random. So it will initialize a with 0 or 1 and b with any random number. And then it will find out the difference between the model predictions and the actual data predictions. If the error is huge, it will improve the value of a and b. It will keep on improving till the error between the actual data and the model predictions becomes minimal. And that's also the hidden truth behind a popular machine learning algorithm called linear regression or neural networks. This optimization happens in the chunks in various machine learning and deep learning algorithms. So this is why this topic becomes very important. This project it gives you an understanding of how optimization happens. What do you mean by optimization? Optimization is a way to find out the best parameters in an equation or an expression using gradient descent or any other algorithm. Basically, we have read the art of finding the maxima and minima back in school days. So what we do in that, suppose we have a parabola, we want to find out the x corresponding to the minimum y, and the way we would do that is by calculating the derivatives and stuff like that. Now what if you have a mountain, or you are standing in a very topsy turvy kind of surface, and you want to reach the minima? of that surface. So that's exactly what optimization is. Optimization is the way to iteratively reach to the minima. And the minima would mean the magnitude of the minima is the error, right? So we want to reach out to the minima of the error and find out wherever the error is minimum, what is the value of the constants or the coefficients of the equation. And once we find out those coefficients, we say that we have found the best model for fitting to the actual data. Okay, so with that theory, this is my hyperbolic model that I want to fit, Q hyperbolic. Everyone knows that hyperbolic equation is Qi, which is initial flow rate, upon 1 plus B dit whole to the power 1 by B. Okay. Now, when we were doing this in like college, or when we are writing a answer in your examination, at that time you need to worry about what this B is and D is. But for a computer, B and D are just two different coefficients or constants that it has to find using least square optimization. Okay. So how we do that is we provide the actual data, we normalize it just so that, the convergence becomes quicker. Okay. Now we use this curve fit function that we have imported in from SciPy. This is the curve fit. In this curve fit, we provide three informations. First information is the kind of model you want to fit. So this is the function that we have. So we always have to create the function for the model that you want to fit. If it was exponential decline, you would have to create the function for exponential and then pass that function in this. Okay. And then you provide the data that you want to fit into that function. So Tn and Qn, basically the normalized versions of the time and flow rate, are the two things that I'm passing. And once I put that, this function calculates in itself the best representative values of the parameters B and Di, and it will return it to the parameters variable. Okay. There are three coefficients, by the way. First is Qi, then there is B, and then there is D. All right. So these are the three parameters that we have calculated in this fashion using SciPy curve fit. And once we have calculated this, all we have to do is denormalize the time and flow rate again, and again use these parameters to finally calculate what we call as Q hyperbolic fit. Okay, because this is the fitted data, not the actual data. But this fitting has been done by looking at the actual data. Finally, once we have returned it, we store it into this Q fit variable. And finally, we plot both of these things together. On the x-axis, we plot the time. On the y-axis, we plot the flow rates, actual data. Also on the y-axis, we plot the flow rates, model predictions data. And we see how it looks like. Okay, visual comparison. And there you go. Okay, so you can see the brown line is basically, all I've done is basically simple plotting. You already know plotting by now. T by Q is giving you the green dots, because T by Q is the actual data. T by Q fit is the model data. Okay. So finally, now you can see the model is pretty good. SciPy, which is Scientific Library of Python, has done pretty good job in optimized curve fitting. If you want to do it in Microsoft Excel, you have to do it. It's I have seen people do it, and it's possible, but it's not too friendly. Okay. So if you want to do it in Python, all you have now, I can use the same structure for any sort of data. I don't have to worry about, I can just run it and import data, and runs for every sort of data there is. Okay. So it looks pretty good. If someone wants me to quantify the error, for the quantification of error rather than just looking at the visuals, I can do that as well. I can do what do you call the mean squared error or the root mean squared error. Okay. And to do that, you can use sklearn from sklearn dot metrics import MSC mean squared error, mean squared. You can see a lot of error metrics are there in this mean squared error as MSC. Okay, and I can use this mean squared error to calculate how much far away the model predictions are from my actual data. I can also have a look myself. Q I know. You can see Q is this, and in the next code cell, I will run Q underscore fit. And you can see it's doing pretty fine. Of course, at the last ends, it's underestimating the flow rates, as is evident from this data. But you can see around this, it's 16835. This is 16589, pretty close. I understand that this is not a great model like this. With the advent of machine learning techniques and all, this is a very simplistic model, but it is very good because it is based on the reservoir physics. A reservoir physics, now all of these data are not representative of the reservoir. Basically, they might be coming because of sensor fluctuations, various operational constraints. There might have been change in operational conditions and all. So that basically fails ARP's decline curve analysis as well. But ARPS has already, the scientist had already told people that, hey, if you want to, want my model to work perfectly fine, make sure you always maintain the same conditions throughout the life of the well. Now that some people can call it a drawback, some people can call it, hey, why are the operational conditions varying? Can you not just keep things constant for a while for ARPS model to fit? It depends on the perspective you want to see. But basically, even this technique, which is years old, it's still valid. And in fact, we can still do projects out of it. That becomes a good resume project as well. Now, since we have found out the best model, we can extend this, this line keeps on extending, and we can extend to the time that the model has never seen. And that's what we call production forecasting. And at any time, suppose I'm standing at 400 day, the definition of reserves is the area under the curve. Okay. So suppose this is where I'm standing, let's say 980 days or something at 1000 day. This is present. This is today's date, suppose. And I do a forecast of this. I do a forecast into the future. All I have to do now, someone asked me how much reserve is there. The definition of reserve is the amount of oil left in the reservoir from the given date forward. That means I don't have to look at what was there in the back. I have to look at what is coming ahead of me. All I have to do is I have to do a forecast, and then I have to do a area under the curve using numerical techniques. Again, you cannot do analytical techniques in Python. This is more like a homework assignment you can take. You can do trapezoidal rule. I'll write it there for you. Reserves calculation. You can use numerical integration, and the easiest in numerical integration, the easiest technique is trapezoidal rule. Okay, so you can try doing that. You can also try, if you are starting your project at this, how much oil were we looking at that made the project viable. Okay, you can do various such things as they keep on coming to your mind. All you have to do is Google it up, see how numerical integration is done in Python, and you know do a lot of things. So that ends basically the decline curve analysis project as well. Now I will give you a slight heads up about what's coming ahead. In this technique, this is based on physics. We must know that we must know the equation prior to the project, right? What if we did not know what hyperbolic equation looks like? Because the SciPy curve fit needs the equation, right? But how about the case where we did not know the equation? Now, in that case, the whole project fails. So we need the information of the equation or the information from the physics. Otherwise, we cannot do anything. Now, that is the difference between a data-driven project and a physics-based project. Of course, we did it in Python. Just because we did visualizations, calculations, curve fit optimization, it becomes a typical data analysis kind of physics-based project. But it's not actually a data-driven project, because in data-driven approaches, we normally start with only data. We don't take any assumptions. We don't take any equations. We don't consider physics at all. We do not tell machine what it has to learn. Right now, it's in a way we are cheating with the machine. It's not called machine learning for a reason, because we are telling, hey machine, look, this is a pretty beautiful kind of equation which is called Q hyperbolic. Take this data and can you please fit this data into this equation for me? Now all the machine is doing is it's like a robotic job that we have asked it to do. It's not doing learning on its own behalf. Now this is where we totally differentiate between these kind of tasks and machine learning. What if I did not know this Q hyperbolic? All I knew was T and Q. and I had some kind of magical technique which would help me figure out a way to fit similar or even better models in this data, figure out a way to fit a better brown line which fits better in this data and gives me better forecast for the future, and having to provide nothing to the computer from my end, just data. That's called what? That's called machine learning. And that's our topic for the coming lectures. And that's what will make you, you know, pretty apt with the pretty, fast pace with what's going on in the industry. It's famous for a reason, because why do we have to depend on these physical formulae which were developed in God knows when, with no disrespect, but why cannot we, if we have millions of production rate data, why cannot we trust the data and ask the computer to understand from the data itself? Because we have made such huge capable computers, we have such huge computational techniques that we can now trust the computers more than we can trust the equations coming from 100 years back. Okay, so that prepares you for what's coming ahead in the next lecture. We'll talk about machine learning, and we'll talk about data driven approaches, where we will normally start with only data, and I will give you a proof, a field, not a field but a use case, where I will tell you that why can we trust this machine learning technique, why can we trust it to understand physics. I will give you a very nice case study which proves us that machines can understand physics even if we tell them nothing but just the data. All right. So that basically ends today's session on these two projects. We can have a good discussion because we have time left. We can have discussions and not like take doubts. Do we have doubts? I don't think. Okay. Attendance sheet. Yeah. So there's no doubt, I guess.
You finished, Mr. TF? Yes.
I'm done with the session. If there's any
Okay,
doubt, we
thank
can.
you. That was a great session. Thank you for the rich information. I can see any questions on the chat box.
Yeah.
So if anyone, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box. Chat box.
Yes. I can wait for 10. You can wait for questions to come up. A lot of projects, even beyond this, they are there in my GitHub repository. So the link you already know. You can look at oil and gas data analysis repository I have shared. So,
Do you have any questions?
it does not have to be with respect to the topic. You can ask me anything if you are struggling with a session or struggling with a topic, anything. I can try my best to answer that.
I guess there are no questions, Mr. TF. Oh,
I have. I will read the question. I found the question. If you want to add on the type curve matching in well-test module about its derivative curve you showed, what do you think? How should we model that in Python? Yeah, great question, Yatin sir. So that we can do in Python. Basically, I was doing that yesterday itself, I guess. I was trying to do Gringarten type curves in Python. So the simplest way to do that would be to suppose we have various the variant in that case is in on the x-axis we have dimensionless TD by CD, right? And on y-axis we have a dimensionless pressure. And the variant in that is basically the value of CD e to the power 2s, and that we can create a list or a numpy array of various values of this variant, and we can loop over all these variants because we already know the equation. Suppose we take this simple example of of a family of curves. It takes me back to the family of curves of circles, for example. X squared plus y squared equals to r squared, right? Now, depending on the various values of radius, the family of circles will have different plots. Now, what if I want to do this plot on the same Cartesian canvas? What I would do in that case is I would take my R and I would create a list of this R, and I would take, I would loop on this R and pass in the equation of circle over various radius. I will calculate X and Y for all these circles and plot them. In that way, in every iteration of a loop, I am creating a plot of a circle. And suppose I have 10 values of radius, I have 10 plots of circles. And that gives me a family of circles on a single plot. And that is very similar to how we do a type curve plotting, a family of type curves in Python. So we can do that as well. But because we have also have to, if suppose the number of type curves goes beyond 20, 30, so in that case, I would recommend doing the same for loop kind of thing, but doing it in Plotly Express that I talked about in the last lecture. So that becomes what? Yeah. So that's about type curves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vyas. I think that's it for today's session.
All right.
It has been a really rich session. So I think for the next session, and we will back. So everyone, you should check your canvas, and the quiz will be you will be informed when the quiz is posted. Thank you, Mr. Vyas, and goodbye, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Good day. Good day, everyone.